What's up, guys? Evolutionary podcast coming your way. Stevesmi here. Got Rick in the house. What's up, man?
Hey, what's up, guys? What's up, Steve? How you doing today, buddy?
So, guys, we're up to Trenbolone. And this is going to be a fun one, guys. We have a lot of information, so let's get right into it. So, guys, Trenbolone, this is the god of steroids. In the bodybuilding community, we call it Tren or Fina. That's a slang term. All the main steroids, guys, out there, it is the most powerful steroid. There's just no comparison. Once you use it, guys, it's like driving a Lamborghini off the lot. I mean, you'll never be able to go back to a Ford. It's going to be really, really hard. So the problem with Trendo, it's not just powerful in the results that it's going to give you, but it's also powerful with side effects, especially the androgenic side effects. We're going to get into that on this podcast. So it's not a good idea for beginners for that reason. I'm going to bring in Rick, and Rick's going to go over the history of Trenbolone. Rick, give us the history, man.
All right. So Trenbolone is one of these drugs that was developed during like the golden era of new steroid creation, basically. It's between 1930s all the way to 1950s, mid-60s. So it was first synthesized in 1963. And it was used as a growth promoter in the cattle industry, early 70s through the 80s. Over time, it's had different versions of it. Parabolin was actually Trenbolone hexadrobenzyl carbonate. That's what it is. It also came as Trenbolone acetate in cattle pellets, Finaplex H. So Trenbolone was used all through the 60s, late 60s, 70s, and 80s. Around the mid-80s to early 90s, it was available as Parabolin for human use. It was then discontinued for human use. And you didn't really see much Trenbolone at all in the market, say from about 1995 all the way until about 2001, 2002 is when Trenbolone kind of came back. And the way Trenbolone came back is these guys on the forums, I think the guy's name was Animal. There was another dude, I think he was Eggy Cream and Instinct. These are all handles right on the forums. And this guy Animal developed a kit that you could use to extract the Trenbolone acetate out of the pellets, the cattle pellets. Now, remember, guys, these pellets were put in a little gun, and then they would put it they would shoot them under the skin, under the hide of the cow. And the pellets would sit there, about 20 milligrams of Trenbolone per pellet, and they would dissolve over time. And cows need a lot less steroids to grow than we do. So the doses that might make you, just gain a couple pounds in a week will make a cow blow the fuck up on the same doses that a human might not gain a lot of weight on. So just 20 milligram a pellet of Trenbolone makes a huge difference in a cow. And Trenbolone came back as an injectable form for human use around 2001, 2002, 2003. It was really hot. This is when guys were extracting it out of the Finaplex H pellets. It was very simple to buy those pellets. You could just order them online. You didn't even have to prove you had a cow, no prescription, no anything. It was incredibly easy to buy the pellets, get them delivered to your home. It was incredibly easy to buy the kit. And in about one afternoon, you could have yourself injectable Trenbolone acetate. Get into around 2005 is when there were a lot of versions of Trenbolone available then. A lot of the Mexican brands, the veterinary Mexican brands had put out their own version. Animal Power, Dancal, Quality Vet, Tokyo, all these places were putting out Trenbolone. And then it started to show up in some underground lab price sheets from guys coming out of Europe. So it was gone for about a good 5 to 6 year span, mid 90s to very early 2000s. But then it came back and it's been here to stay. It's one of the most infamous anabolic steroids in the world. There is a version of it. There's a methyl Trenbolone, which a lot of people don't even know exists. And that stuff is so harsh and so toxic. You can only use a couple of milligrams of it per day before it starts to really mess you up. So Trenbolone is very powerful. It comes methylated. It comes in free form. It comes in acetate. It comes in anatate. It's really just one of the most popular, one of the most famous and infamous steroids to have ever been used.
So Rick mentioned the forms of Trenbolone. Let's get into the actual compound. some of the chemistry behind it. It is a 19 nor testosterone. So it lacks a carbon atom at the 19th position. So it's a modified version of the nandrolone, the hormone. But here's the thing. It's much different than decadecanate because this thing is extremely androgenic. In fact, on paper, 5 times as androgenic as testosterone. And the reason for that is it carries a double bond of the 9th and 11th carbons. So it's going to bind extremely strong to the androgen receptor. So when you're on it, you can expect strength, mass, aggressiveness, feeling like Superman. I personally, people laugh about this, but I've actually been pouring cups of water or juice into a glass cup. And as I was doing that, the cup actually shattered in my hand when I was on Trenbolone. So it really legitimately turns you into Superman when you're on it. I mean, no joke. I've changed light bulbs and had the light bulb smash in my hand when I've been on Tren. It just gives you so much strength. It's been ridiculous. Even when I'm fishing on Tren, I notice like people I'm fishing with, they're like, Steve, what are you doing? You're ripping the hook out of the fish's mouth. You're like not even like fishing correctly. It's because it makes you so fucking strong and you can't even help it. So we'll get into some more stuff on it. Let's talk about dosages and injection frequency. So Rick, tell us about your favorite dosages of Tren and what kind of injection frequency should you do based on the esters?
Well, it depends what you use, right? Trenbolone acetate or natate, whatever you have available to you. I think every 3rd day is good, man. If you have acetate, you want to do it every other day or maybe every day. Natate, every 3rd day. I like natate every 3rd day. I think that's a good way to take the hormone. I've personally found I get less side effects. I need less anti-estrogens, at least with testosterone. When I take testosterone natate every 3 days, I feel like I don't need to take as much anti-estrogens and it keeps it steady at a level. So natate, every 3rd day. Acetate, I would spark it every day. Every other day if you don't want to get burned out on the injections, but every day for acetate would probably be the best in my opinion.
Yeah, acetate. Yeah, I was gonna say the half-life.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the half-life for acetate is 2 to 3 days. Enanthate is 8 to 10 days. The hex is 10 to 12 days, and then no ester is 68 hours. No ester Tren. I wanted to ask you though, Rick, about the detection times because the Trenbolone esters are about 5-month detection time. So it's a really bad idea if you're a tested athlete. But what about the no ester Trenbolone? Because I've read that the detection time, even on the no ester Trenbolone, is 60 days or more. How can that even be possible? Can you explain that?
We're entering a new era in testing now, and all this old stuff is going out the window because now they're beginning to test for metabolites that linger months and months later. So Trenbolone, as it encounters different enzymes in your body, is going to get turned into different metabolites every which way. It's already designed on paper to not become an estrogen, so that's been taken care of. But when it comes to other enzymes and other processes in the body, it's going to leave other metabolites. And we're getting into a really new era now in testing where they're testing for these metabolites, and some of them can linger in different parts of the body, everything from mostly fatty tissue, but sometimes bone, sometimes different areas of your body, these metabolites will linger in. And the scientists that are developing this testing, is they know for a fact, it's proven that this metabolite could not exist in your body unless you had injected this other synthetic hormone previously. That is the only way that this metabolite could appear in your body today, is because it's been converted from an earlier banned synthetic drug that you took. So, the detection times, I guess, look, esters, what Steve said with the esters and natate is pretty consistent. But new era, guys, and if you're a top level athlete, it's a new era. They're going to catch you if they want you.
All right, guys, so let's talk about the side effects. The first one I want to talk about, guys, you're never going to hear this on any other place, is the effects that Trenbolone has on inflammation in the body. PGF2A, PGE2, those are prostaglandins, okay? And what happens is when you take Trenbolone, those rise in the body, and those actually cause inflammation. So you may notice on Tren, a lot of health problems arise You notice maybe some bloat, and you're like, why am I bloating on tren? Well, that's because it's so fucking inflammatory. You'll notice gut problems on tren. You'll notice heartburn, stuff like that. You're like, why am I getting this on tren? Because it's so fucking inflammatory. Your organs will get fucked up on tren because it's inflammatory. All these inflammatory problems on tren. So it's really gonna fucking make you feel fatigue and make you feel like shit when you're on it because of that inflammation. Some of the other side effects, guys, the big one is Trenbolone rage. And what that is basically so androgenic in the body. If you don't react well to androgens, let's say you're not a patient person, if you go on tren, you're going to be even less of a patient person. If you get grumpy when you're hungry, on tren, you're going to be even more grumpy when you're hungry. You're going to lash out at people. You're going to lash out at the waitress at the restaurant for not bringing out your food on time. If you have sleeping problems, okay, already, and you go on tren, you're going to have even more sleeping problems. So it's going to cause all this issue. If you're an aggressive guy, you like to pick fights, you're going to end up in jail when you take tren. So it's going to make all this shit even worse. What are some other side effects, Rick? Have you noticed that the rage from tren as well?
Yeah, tren will affect the way you think, the way you react. It will affect everything from the way you have sex to the way you problem solve. You really have to be conscious that you are on a very strong androgen and you're going to react quite a bit differently to certain situations. So Trenbolone definitely, yeah, I mean, it'll get you up there. If you already have a bad temper to begin with, Trenbolone will be trouble. Also, I wouldn't take Trenbolone if you're like on some of these ADD medications like Adderall, Ritalin. Definitely don't take tren if you partake in like cocaine or any amphetamines or anything like that recreationally. It'll make your temper shit. Those kind of stimulants will already make you quick tempered. You add a strong steroid like Trenbolone to it, and you're going to be a real asshole to everyone. So real careful with some of those heavy stimulants and Trenbolone because you'll be on a much shorter fuse for sure.
I'm going to let Rick get into some of the advice for organ aid when you're on tren. But let's, for the heart and for the kidneys, but let's talk about dopamine because tren affects dopamine more than any of the main steroids. And that actually is our reward sensor in our body. So if you like gambling, you're going to want to gamble more on tren. If you like to if you cheat on your spouse or think about cheating on your spouse, when you're on tren, you're going to want to cheat on your spouse. It's the relationship killer for a reason. I wouldn't use it. If you have a problem cheating and you're trying to get through it, don't use it. If you have alcoholic problems, don't use it. Any addictions, it's going to affect your prolactin levels. It's going to cause a boost in your prolactin levels. Although I will say, like, if you use it smartly, you should not have an issue with prolactin. But if you abuse tren, you can open yourself up for prolactin issues where that's going to be lactation in your nipples. Basically, it's going to be brown shit coming out of your nipples. So it won't give you gyno, but it can cause lactation. I've seen that with guys who have abused it. I want to get in, Rick, on this. How does tren affect your lipid health, your heart health, and what's a good support supplements that you should be running with it?
Well, I always recommend Entugard, obviously. It's the product that I've developed just for this very reason, for Trenbolone cycles, for oral cycles. So definitely Entugard by Need to Build Muscle is going to cover all of your bases. And it's a full support, has everything you need to go along with your steroid cycle. We have more details about the product, about Entugard on our YouTube page and our website. I'll make sure that on the description to this podcast, wherever you're listening to it, we'll have a link to those places so you can go and research more on it. But yeah, definitely Entugard goes with every Trenbolone cycle. You absolutely protecting your heart, helping your kidneys along, even your liver. A lot of guys think that if you're taking injectable steroids that you don't need liver support. You actually do, okay? Injectable steroids will hurt your liver. Not as badly as the orals, but they will still have an effect on your liver. If you ever got your hands on some legitimate human-grade injectable testosterone and you get in there and you open the packet insert, it'll warn you about liver problems. So you definitely want to take Entugard with every cycle that you're on.
All right, guys. So what are the user results on Trenbolone? I'm gonna just plain out say it, guys. I mean, I hit my all-time personal records in both mass, weight, and in strength when I was on a trend cycle. You will never be able to lift as much as you can lift on trend. I was lifting an ungodly amount of weight, and that's what you're going to notice. Those of you who are a lot more insulin sensitive, you're going to notice when you're on trend, you shred up very, very easily on the stuff. But if you're insulin resistant and you go on trend, you may notice that you easily put on a lot of mass. Like even if your diet stays the same, you'll notice that you like gain a crazy amount of weight like within the first couple of weeks on it. You'll gain like 5 or 10 pounds right off the bat, and it's not necessarily just like water weight. A lot of it might be some inflammation, but it's just gonna put on weight so easily. It's great at nutrition partitioning, like the food that you're putting in your body. It basically makes your body absorb it like a sponge. So it's an incredible steroid. Guys will notice like all their lifts like so fast. Like you go on it within like 2 or 3 weeks, your lifts are just sky high. It's an amazing steroid, guys, but it should not be used unless you're experienced. It's not a good idea. I would not use it the first 5 cycles. Save it for much later because it's a very, very strong steroid and you're not going to want to go back to something else when you use it. So Rick, tell us your opinion on that. And then can I get into your favorite Trenbolone stacks? What's the best way to stack it?
Trenbolone goes great with pretty much every steroid out there. It's a really, really good steroid. I wouldn't mix it with Deca. I think you might have some sexual issues, some issues with the way you have sex if you mess with Deca and Trenbolone at the same time. Also, I might stay away from Trenbolone and Winstrol at the same time, guys. You can maybe use it in the same cycle in different parts, but I'd probably stay away from those two just because of the hair issues. So mixing Winstrol with Tren, you might have some hair skin issues. Mixing Tren with Deca, you might have some issues with your dick. Those are all 19 Nor steroids, and they're all in that family. So you need to be aware of that as well. But look, good stacks: Trenbolone acetate, testosterone propionate, and equipoise. Perfect stack. Those 3 are really, really nice stack. Trenbolone and Test, great stack. Trenbolone and Turinabol, pretty damn good stack. Trenbolone and Atomar, it's a great stack as well. Trenbolone and Primobolan, great stack as well. I think the only things that I would personally be concerned with Tren is mixed with Winstrol, maybe your hair, mixed with Deca, your dick. Besides that, it'll actually stack pretty decent with pretty much anything you throw at it. In my opinion. What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, Tren and Winstrol shed my hair like nothing else. And also the side effects were so bad on that stack. What I did on Tren to hit my PRs was Tren and VAR, and another cycle was Tren and T-Bol. And that was it. I did not use testosterone with it, and that was a low side effect cycle. I used about 250 milligrams of Tren a week, and I use a very low dose of VAR. I think it was like 30, 40 milligrams of VAR and like 20, 30 milligrams of T-Bol on those separate cycles. I got fantastic results. I was told one time by an IFBB pro bodybuilder, and he said there's absolutely no reason to ever run Tren more than 250 milligrams a week. And you know what? I've ran Tren enough that I agree with him. There really is no reason. If you run Tren 400 or 500 milligrams a week, it's just going to be side effects. It's not going to give you better results. It's just going to give you much more side effects multiplied. So just, run it conservatively. You don't have to run much. It works so amazingly fast that you don't even have to like run a kickstart with it. It's the king of all steroids, period. It's just the nectar of the gods. Rick, what about the costs and the ease of access? What's your experience with that? Is it easy to get? Is it cheap?
It's actually in the mid-range. It doesn't tend to be as expensive as like Primobolan milligram per milligram, but it's not as cheap as Dianabol. It's very hard to be substituted. Trenbolone has very specific side effects to it, and it's very hard. Even the color of it, the amber color it has that comes from some oxidation of the hormone there, even that's hard to replicate because other steroids don't develop an amber color the way Trenbolone does. So if you know what to look for, if you can tell if Trenbolone is fake or not if you just take a little drop of it and drop it on your tongue. It's the only steroid that's gonna prick your tongue like hot sauce. It'll also, the smell of it, very distinctive smell. The way it makes your pee smells, very distinctive. So it's got a lot of very distinctive signs to it. Color and taste being one of them. That if you know what you're looking for, it'd be pretty tough for them to stick you with something, for them to substitute it for something else. I mean, I don't know what they would substitute Trenbolone for, really. The only thing that really kind of came close to Trenbolone, I thought, was Superdrol, oral Superdrol, very close to Trenbolone-like effects. Probably a little bit, in my opinion, probably a little bit better for gaining mass than Trenbolone is Superdrol, providing you ate enough. But yeah, same thing with Trenbolone. If you want to gain mass on it, you got to eat a ton of food on Tren, and you'll gain some solid mass on it. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, guys, and let me just go over one of the last time because I want to get Rick in on at the end here and talk about trend cough because we didn't mention trend cough as one of the side effects. I want to let Rick explain what that is and his tips on it really quick. But first, let me say female use, guys, out of the question. I have seen some females on the forums use Tren. I do not recommend it. It is just too androgenic for females. It will give you viralization side effects. And some of those viralization side effects can be pretty permanent. So I would not be using Tren. So Rick, anything else to add? And I definitely want to hear about your Tren cough advice.
Yeah, Tren is not for women. Tren is not for women. I won't get into specifics, but back in the day when we used to bake the Tren out of the pellets, the one way to know if you got a good yield out of the acetate or not is because like a quarter of a milliliter, like a quarter of a cc, if a girl took a quarter of a cc of Tren acetate, within 24 hours, her clitoris would be on fire. Very sensitive. Those heavy androgens would just completely, the girl would know she was on something. And it was in and out very quickly because it's acetate, obviously. But no, Tren is not for women, not for women at all. I wouldn't recommend it. I don't think it might make women go bald. I think Trenbolone is going to have a real issue on the hairline and also thickening of the voice. It's not worth it. I'll say it again. Fitness girl, all you need is about Anavar, Winstrol, a little bit of sun, maybe a little bit of peptides. It's about all you need. Anything else is going to start turning you into a dude, really.
So tell us about Tren cough.
Well, Tren cough, it's a process that basically happens with most injectable steroids, which basically when you're injecting, the needle can actually pass right through a blood vessel. It'll punch right through it. After injection, okay, of any injectable steroids, you run a chance of the steroid going into your blood system right away, which is not what we want. You inject the needle deep into the muscle. As you press the needle, you create a depot. You create a bubble of oil between the muscle. Ideally, you're not shooting into your blood, you're shooting into the muscle. And then as time goes by, the oil will start to escape out of the depot, and then your blood system will absorb it slowly. Once in a while, when you put in the needle in, you'll spear right through a capillary. You'll cut right through a blood vessel. And then when you inject and you create the depot, you create an area there with pressure because the oil is there where there was just muscle before. Now you created a depot by stretching the muscle out. When you pull the needle out, some of that pressure can push oil into that broken blood vessel, and it'll circulate right through your blood system and it'll get to your lungs. Now, when it's testosterone or DECA or anything else you're injecting, you might feel a little something, but it's not as severe. You might even go unnoticed. You'll just feel like you're breathing out a weird kind of solvent taste, alcohol kind of taste. But that's about it. Not when you have Trenbolone, okay? When you're injecting Trenbolone and this happens, the Trenbolone, when it gets to your lungs, it's hot like hot sauce. It's one of the things I said, if you want to try it, put Trenbolone on your tongue. You'll see what it tastes like. Well, it's like pouring hot sauce into your lungs, and you're going to go into this uncontrollable tren cough that just, it hurts. It feels like you really did something fucked up to yourself. It's to the point where many guys have called 911 while they're coughing, only to call back a minute or two later to tell them it was a false alarm, because the pain is so unbearable. You really think something's going on, and then it's gone just as quickly. So the process of oil from an injection leaking into your blood system and getting to your lungs, very common, actually a lot more common than most people think. But when it's Trenbolone, you'll have you have an irritation and kind of like a hot sauce in your lungs effect that's really not pleasant at all.
Yeah, and that's all more reason not to use Tren on first cycle, guys. There's so much stuff that we went over on this podcast that if you're not reading about this and not listening to a podcast like this, it's really a mistake just to hop into it, because like Rick said, you don't want to end up calling 911 for a false alarm because you didn't know that tren cough even existed. So the first time I got tren cough, I knew it. I did my research. I knew it was a possibility, and I was like, fuck, now I know what it feels like. But I didn't panic. I didn't call 911. I knew it was possible. So, be very careful, guys. Trenbolone is no joke, guys. And, use this podcast as a reference to go back and learn more. If you got further questions, hit me up on the forum, Stevesmi. For Stevesmi and Rick, thanks for listening. We'll have another podcast next week. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Rick.
Hey, have a good night, Steve. Have a good night, guys.
Guys, this is the required legal disclaimer. We are only sharing our experience from years of steroid use. We are not doctors, and none of what we say should be regarded as medical advice. Always check with your doctor before taking any drugs or starting any training program.